everyone. You're very welcome to our senior assembly today. And I welcome you as we come together in these weeks leading up to your Easter holidays. As we come near to the week known as Holy Week, we will be thinking about Jesus as he makes his way to Jerusalem. And as he goes to Jerusalem, we think about him and remember that he went there and would be crucified on a cross, but that 3 days later, on Easter Sunday, he would rise from the dead, and that would be his resurrection. Before we go to that story, of course, we think about Lazarus. This is a story about a man called Lazarus. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem for the last time, and he stays and goes to the village of Bethany. And in Bethany, there were people who lived there, Lazarus and his two sisters, Martha and Mary, and they both lived with him in his same house, and they were very helpful and they supported one another. But then something really sad happened. Lazarus had been sick for some time, and the sisters were hoping that Jesus would come along and heal him. But Jesus didn't get there in time, and Lazarus died because he had been very sick. So Jesus arrives some days after Lazarus has died, and as he approaches the village of Bethany, he realizes that things are not going very well. There are people standing around crying in the streets. There are people talking to Martha and Mary, putting their arms around them, kissing them on the cheek and holding them and giving them a hug, because they realize that these two ladies have lost their brother. He has died, and they're very sad for them. Jesus comes towards the village, and then Martha, one of the sisters, runs out to him and says, "What has taken you so long? We wanted you to come here sooner. Lazarus has been dying, and we sent a message to you, but you've taken a long time getting here, and I'm afraid Lazarus has died." And Jesus says to Martha, "Lazarus will rise again from the dead." Martha looks at him and says, "Oh, I know that. He's going to be part of the resurrection at the very end, when the world comes to an end and when we all go to be with you forever. He will be there at that resurrection." And then Jesus says one of the most powerful words in the entire Bible. This is what he says to Martha: "I am the resurrection. I have control over those who will rise to life and those who will be with God forever." And Martha is astounded by what he says. Not just astounded, but then Jesus asks to go to Lazarus' grave. And just as he approaches the grave, which was like a cave with a large stone in front of it, just as he approaches there, we have the shortest verse in the Bible. It only has 2 words in it. The verse is, "Jesus wept." It means Jesus cried. Of course he cried. Lazarus was one of his closest friends. But then, as soon as he has shed his tears, Jesus says to those near the grave, "Roll away the stone from the grave." And everybody thought, "I don't think this is a good idea. I think it's a really bad idea. Lazarus is dead in there. He's been dead for 4 days. But Jesus says, "Roll away that stone." So they roll away the stone at Lazarus' grave. And just as they do so, Jesus shouts out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And that's just what he does. Lazarus comes out of his grave. He's already covered in grave clothes. This is where cloth was wound around the head and the arms and the body of the person who had been put in the grave. And as Lazarus comes out of his grave, he looks as if his eyes are covered up, his head is covered up, his arms are covered up. And Jesus says to the crowd, "Release him." That means take off all these bandages, release him and let him go. And they do. And the amazing thing is that sometime after, Jesus will be in Lazarus' house again. He'll be there with his disciples. And at a meal where Lazarus is looking after all of these guests, at a meal in his own house, we will be reminded of what Jesus has done by raising Lazarus from the dead. This is a powerful story, and coming so close to Easter, it reminds us of Jesus' own death on the cross and his resurrection. How even though he had died a cruel death, 3 days later, Jesus would rise to life again on Easter Sunday. And when he did, many people would realize that this was a special person. This was the Son of God who had come among them and was now able to come back to life. It's a great story, this. It's a heartwarming story. It's also a sad story at the beginning, but it is a story with a wonderful ending, where Lazarus rises from his grave and will be with his sisters and with his friends until he dies with them and they go to heaven. And they are there with Jesus, who himself rose from the dead. And we are reminded in this story about our own resurrection, that when we die, we will rise again in heaven with God, and that we will be with him forever. And that's a very special message for us as we approach our Easter break and our Easter holidays. Thank you for listening so carefully to this story today. It's a very special story indeed. And now I'd like you to actually say this prayer after me, please, this afternoon. So this prayer is, Dear Jesus, thank you for raising Lazarus from the dead. Help me to understand that you are the resurrection, and help me to trust you, that I will have my own resurrection when I go to be with you in the kingdom of heaven. Amen. Together we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And the Lord bless you and keep you today and forever. Amen. Thank you for listening so carefully, everyone. Look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. In the meantime, keep safe and well, and a blessing to you and to your families. See you soon. Goodbye now.